Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe, but today, let's talk about the tech bubble in the stock market. Is it soon to burst? And there's some real interesting information coming, quite frankly, from a really interesting source. Now, this was a write-up in the Daily Mail, and I thought this was interesting because Howard Marks, and if you don't know who he is, he's a billionaire investor who predicted the dot-com crash 25 years ago. And he basically just warned that he is on bubble watch, quote unquote, as warning signs appear to have cropped up in the market. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I am not an expert at, at stocks, all that kind of stuff, finance, economics, all that. I'm interested in it. I read about it. I am not a billionaire. I'm a hundredaire. So here we are. But with that, let's talk about what Marx had to say, because he also pointed out cautionary signs in the stock market that could mean poor returns over the long term or a large decline in the nearer term as well. Quote, "It shouldn't come as a surprise that the return on an investment is significantly a function of the price paid for it. For that reason, investors clearly shouldn't be indifferent to today's market valuation." End quote. Now, he also said that although he doesn't believe a bubble poses an immediate threat, there are signs he's noticing that may actually speed up that process. These include the market optimism since late 2022, basically enthusiasm in AI or artificial intelligence, a reliance on tech giants because they are consolidating. It's very hard to compete with the Facebooks of the world if you're a startup social media platform, and also index investing bias. Marx said that the above average valuation on the S&P 500 and the fact that basically its stocks in most industrial groups sell in, or rather at higher multiples than stocks in those industries in the rest of the world, that was one of the cautionary signs of a bubble. In other words, the S&P 500 is outperforming essentially the rest of their industry competitors to a significant margin. And so that disparity obviously would look like it's creating a bubble. Now, he also mentioned Bitcoin and said, and I quote, "Regardless of its merit, the fact that its price rose 465% in the last 2 years doesn't suggest an overabundance of caution." End quote. In other words, it's going to at some point burst. It's going to go down, that it's hyperinflated. We've seen that with meme stocks, all that kind of stuff as well, where things are evaluated way more than what they're actually worth, given what they are, et cetera, et cetera. Now, looking at examples of the 2000 bubble, he highlighted 20 companies that were the most heavily represented in the index. And at the beginning of 2024, only 6 of those companies were still in the top 20. Microsoft, one of obviously today's top companies right now, was in the top 20 25 years ago and is one of the few that obviously remained of that 6. Quote, "In bubbles, investors treat the leading companies and pay for their stocks as though the firms are sure to remain leaders for decades." End quote. So in other words, the top 20 back then are not the top 20 now. Only 6 of them remained, which means you can't rely on that in the long term. Microsoft could get knocked down a peg or 30, and here we are. Now, Marx notably, took trouble with the enthusiasm behind artificial intelligence, which he believes may extend to other high-tech areas. And he concluded, I quote, "I am not an equity investor, and I'm certainly no expert on technology. Thus, I can't speak authoritatively about whether we're in a bubble. I just want to lay out the facts as I see them and suggest how you might think about them, just as I did 25 years ago." And I think that's a really interesting perspective to take, in the sense that you don't necessarily have to be really ensconced in tech or oil or, corn subsidies or whatever it is to understand the forces at play here and see how they're lining up against it. In the same way, and if you're a trained historian, you can look at things like system of governments or frameworks that societies have created and see it repeat over and over and over, because it's human nature in many ways. And, governments come and go, but the systems, the processes, and the forces at play amongst them, technology or not, tend to be the same over and over and over. In other words, we've seen the playbook of what's happening today over and over and over, just as the playbook from 20 years ago was seen over and over and over, and on and on and on. So we're going to see what happens. That is your tech investing news of the day. And like I said, I'm not an expert, but let's listen to the billionaire, I guess, because he predicted the first bubble burst. Maybe he's predicting the second. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. Just don't take my stock tips. Same with Mastodon and Blue Sky. I'm on there too. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private and informed. Take care.